Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies, they're pretty good. I'm your host Travis Dudding, and this episode is dedicated to a Christmas classic called White Christmas. This is the first episode I had requested by a listener, so let's get to it. Okay. Caucasian Christmas. Let's go. We open on a group of soldiers during World War II. They're out on the German front, I guess. I don't know. And they're definitely in Europe. You can tell. They're putting on like a little Broadway show in the middle of a battlefield on Christmas Eve, and you got the new general is pulling up and asking, "Hey, what's going on here?" And the old general's like, "Oh, they're celebrating," and he's like, "No, they should be doing military stuff." And the old general's like, "Yeah, sure, like definitely can't have a nice Christmas Eve, you know." And then to get rid of the new mean general, that he's like, "Okay, like send him back to headquarters," and any like hints at the driver to use the shortcut, which ends up being the like long way that's like 2 hours out of the way. So the old general's going to sit down and watch the show, and here we have the titular song "White Christmas," sung by Bing Crosby, more like Sing Crosby, and he's going ham on that song. Like it's super good. Like he has such a good voice, and it's just like it's very moving, and I don't know, it's just very good. I really like that part, and it's very like heartfelt, warm, and everything like that. And so then he after the song he mentions something about they're getting a new general and everything, and then he's talking a little bit about the old general, and then the old general makes his presence known, and everybody goes to attention, and he gives a little speech talking about just how good this division is and everything like that, and you can just really tell that he actually does like care about his people. And like anyone that, even if you haven't been in the military, like it's the same dynamic with any boss at your job or a teacher in school or anything like that. There's a big difference in who like actually cares about you, and it does wonders for you at your job, school, whatever, to just have a leader that is there for you and not for themselves. So after his speech, then they start singing a song about the "will follow the old man wherever he wants to go," just like one of those military marching songs, jodies, whatever you want to call them. And as they're singing that, then they start getting bombed by the Germans and Nazis, to be specific. And so that everyone's like ducking for cover, and then Bing Crosby's standing there, and then his character's name is Bob Wallace, and then the second lead, played by Danny Kaye, his character's name is Phil Davis. And so then we see this giant rubber wall that's supposed to look like bricks about to fall on Bing Crosby or Bob, and then Davis jumps to save him and pull him out of the way, but he ends up getting injured, but he's fine. So after that, it cuts to them in the infirmary, and he's got the sling on his arm and everything, but he's fine. And they're like about to, I think, he's just saying like once they get out, like once the war is over, that they should start up a act together, and that he like wrote a song and everything like that, because you've come to find out that Bob Wallace is was like an actual like performer and everything like that before the war. So now it cuts to the headlines saying that the war is over, and then we just see this montage of other headlines about them starting up a new act, and it's going well, and they're touring this place and they're playing this place, and it just seems to be going really well. They're getting good ratings and everything like that, good reviews. And now it cuts to like their actual like act and everything like that, And so we get a little taste of it, and then they are pretty good, and then backstage, we find out that that Davis has been trying to set up Wallace with like various women like over the years, just because it's like, hey, like you should probably settle down at some point, that type of thing. And so he's trying to set up this one like blonde dancer, and she's like super ditzy, like the stereotype of blondes and everything like that. And introducing him to her, and she's like, oh, he's like, oh, nice to meet you, and she's like, mutual, I'm sure, which I don't think actually makes sense as a phrase. And I think, well, I mean, that's obviously the joke of it, but but I always like second guess myself, like, is that an actual saying? And I'm just like thinking it's a joke when it's not. But so then they go back to their dressing room, and he's like, why are you always like trying to set me up with people? And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, like that nuclear scientist back there. So he's just kind of making a joke at saying that, she's dumb and everything. And you find out that they're supposed to leave that night for New York on a train, and he's got the tickets and everything, and Davis has them in his pocket and all that. And so then it's like, oh, what else do we have like tonight? And there's this new act, the Haynes sisters, and their brother was with them in the army and everything, and was stationed with them overseas. And so then we cut to them. We get to see the Haynes sisters for the first time. They're backstage in their dressing room, and you got Vera Ellen as Judy Haynes, and Rosemary Clooney, who is George Clooney's aunt, I believe, and she's playing Betty. Betty's the older sister, Judy's the younger sister. A fact about Vera Ellen, and then it's very obvious, you could tell, like, she was known to have the smallest waist in Hollywood at the time, and it actually like was due to her having anorexia, which caused her to prematurely age, and then she died like fairly young. It was like middle ages, but like, or her middle age, not the Middle Ages. And so that's pretty sad. And it's just, yeah, it just goes to show that like how bad it was for women back then, like, and then it's like also kind of eye-opening how it hasn't changed that much, and it seems like we are trying to get back to that, like, all women need to be skinny and everything like that. Like, not trying to get back to that. That's where like the business is trying to get back to that, and the public is not wanting that. But anywho, yeah, they're in their dressing room and just talking about like how like Judy had faked a letter from their brother to them, to get them on the stage and everything like that. That way they can get their big break. And so we see them on the get out on the stage, and then they perform their song Sisters, which will come up like multiple times throughout the movie. And we see Davis and Wallace in the audience. They're watching the show, and then they're both very smitten with the sisters, and you could tell that Davis is attracted to Judy, and Wallace is attracted to Betty. And so they just like can't take their eyes off of them. They watch the whole act and everything. So then they end up, then they go and sit down with them and everything, join them at their table, and they're just talking to them and just like getting to know each other and everything like that. And at some point, like a song comes on, and Judy and Phil go off and dance together. And they're like dancing in this, like, it's supposed to be like outside, but you could tell it's in a soundstage, and it kind of looks like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland and Disney World, and like even down to the fake tiny lighthouse that's they're trying to do like a forced perspective thing to make it look like it's far away, but you could just tell that it's like 20 feet away and 6 feet tall. And so they get their little dancing number and everything, and then you find out that she's telling Judy's telling Phil that they owe somebody some money, and he's like coming to collect it. And so, in order to help him out, Phil gives them the train tickets, because he's also got this idea like, okay, like if we follow them, then I can then hopefully Wallace will fall in love with Betty, and they'll get married, and then I might actually have some time for myself, because we're so busy on the road all the time, and he's never going to settle down unless he like takes a break and tries to settle down. So he's like, all right, like we got to get to Vermont. That's where they're going, and we're going to go with them. So I'm going to give them the tickets, and then we'll just end up going to Vermont too. So he gives them the tickets. They get in a cab and get out of there. But so then the guy's there with the money, and he's there with the sheriff too, and they're trying to stall him so they can escape. And then also to stall them, they're like, okay, like you can't arrest them because they have one more act tonight, and then after that you can go talk to them. So they're like, oh, I hear the music. It's they're about to go on stage right now, and it's Wallace and Davis dressed like slightly in drag, not like full on drag. They're not like wearing dresses or anything, but they're lip syncing the Sisters song, and like just being like super goofy with it and funny. It's like going over super good with the audience. Audience is loving it. They're going crazy for it. And so then like now like, so they don't want to get in trouble and also don't want to miss the train. They got to get out of there as fast as they can. So they're like throwing the trunks in the taxi and everything like that. And then they like barely catch the train. They're like running as it's like taking off from the station. And they get on, and not the conductor, but the guy that goes around, the ticket taker guy, he's like comes up to them. It's like, oh, you barely made it. Like, where's your tickets? And then like Phil's like basically like pretending to look for the tickets, even though he knows very well that he got rid of them. And he's like, oh, I don't have them. And they're like, all right, well, the train's full, so you have to purchase some tickets for the dining car, and you got to stay up all night in there. And they're like, all right, how much is that? And for both of you, it's $90 something. So it was like less than $100 for two people to go from Florida to Vermont. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. And Phil's just saying like, oh, like we're gonna go to Vermont, and Bob's like, no, like we're supposed to go to New York. It's like, how about we just go to Vermont? Like, then, but he ends up finally talking him into it, and they're on their way to the dining car. And then he accidentally bumps a door open, but he's not looking. And then we see that the Haynes sisters are in the cabin and everything, and they see them, and that. So then they go to the dining car. They're sitting there. They order some food and a drink, and Bob's there complaining, and he's like, I'm gonna go like knock on that door, and it better not be because he's totally on to Phil. So he's like, there better not be those Haynes sisters in there. I'm gonna pull them out by their hair and everything. He's like talking up a big game, and then he turns around and here they come, like, oh, thank you so much for the tickets and everything. And then so of course he's like immediately calms down, and he's being nice and everything like that. So then they're there sitting, and they're talking about like going to Vermont and everything like that. And then out of nowhere they start singing about the snow song, or like snow, 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 which includes a lyric about washing my hands, hair, and face with snow. And that's just interesting. I'd like to see someone try to do that, and that just sounds miserable to me, like trying to wash your hair with snow. But it's a catchy song, so it works. So they finally get to Vermont, and there's no snow anywhere. It's like in the mid 60s and everything, and the guy at the train station saying like, oh, it hasn't snowed in weeks and stuff like that. So they're like, all right, whatever, there's no snow, but hey, we're here. So they get up to the inn where they're supposed to have, the Haynes sisters are booked to perform there for like a couple weeks straight. And they get there and they're checking in, and the lady at the at the desk says, "Oh, like, sorry we couldn't get word to you, but the show's been canceled. Like, there's no customers because it hasn't snowed, so there's no like. Usually their customer base is based on people there for skiing and everything, and if there's no snow, there's no skiing. So like, oh no, like, what are we gonna do? Like, are we gonna stay here? So they're talking about that, like, and she offers to pay them half the salary, just for the inconvenience and the fact that they went up there and everything. So that they're in the lobby, like, talking about what they're gonna do, like, you know, do we just all go to New York and everything like that? And as they're standing there, in comes General Waverly, the general from when they were in the war, and it turns out that he owns the place. Like, he's the owner of the inn. And of course, like, right when he walks in, they'll like salute him and everything, because, you know, that last time they saw him, that's what you're supposed to do. So it kind of like takes a while to like get that out of your system and everything. But then, like, so the general's there, and he's like, hey, like, since he knows them, he's like, oh no, like, you guys can't go. Like, the show must go on, you know, we'll perform for like whoever, even if it's just us. So, and he's like still gonna pay them and everything. So it's like, okay, cool, like we'll stay. And then so in order to like make it work for everybody, Bob's like, hey, like, I'm gonna call like all our performers, and instead of, you know, we were gonna practice with them in New York, let's just have them all come up here and we'll practice here. And then that way there's some business for the inn, and also it's just like, even if they aren't like making money off these tiny shows, we get our practice in too, so it all works out. And then this part's a bummer, because it's like, you wouldn't know just from the song itself and the act and everything, but when they're practicing, they're doing it's called the minstrel show. And like, just from the name alone, that implies that this is supposed to be like, probably was usually a blackface thing, and then they just kind of pruned that out of it. And luckily there's not that, from what I can tell, there weren't too many like lingering stereotypes or anything like that, but just, and I was looking out for him too, because once I saw that name, I'm like, ooh, yikes. But other than that, like, other than the name, it seems to be fine, but don't quote me on that. And we had another catchy song in there called Mandy, and it's like, Mandy, keep a minister handy. It's just like about getting married and stuff. And then so that we get that whole like medley of stuff, like what the show's supposed to be like and everything. And then later that night, it's Phil's trying to trick Bob into going down to the lobby for something. I forget what reason he makes up. And then also Judy's trying to trick Betty to go down to the lobby, like, oh, like, why don't you go get a snack before bed, and then you'll probably sleep better and everything like that. So it's obvious that they're trying to get them to like interact with each other, so they'll fall in love and everything like that. And they're there. It's like they're hitting it off pretty well and everything. It's going like super good. And they're like talking. They're like sitting by the fire talking, and just like, it's so casual, and then he just goes right into a song, like it's nothing, like, just goes like right in. And it's just funny to like think about like having a conversation with someone. I mean, like, this is probably like the most hack like observation. It's like, isn't it weird that in musicals they start singing? But I don't know, like, it's just, the more you think about it, like, it's just funny to me. I don't know, it's probably dumb, but that's just what I was thinking about, like, because just how flawlessly he just started singing a song. And it's another banger. It's Count My Blessings, super good. And then, oh, here it comes, they kiss, so it's working. And then so then it cuts to the next day. General's out there. He's telling Bob, like, oh, like, I reapplied for active duty. I'm trying to get back into the military. You know, maybe I could get like a nice desk job or something like that. But And he's like, I'm just waiting for my letter. And then Bob's like, oh, well, I just picked up the mail because I was in town. And, oh, look, here's a letter from the Department of Defense. Maybe that's them, obviously. Duh, who else would it be? And then, so he opens it, and the general's like, oh, no, I can't read it. Like, plus I don't have my glasses. Like, you got to read it to me. And so he reads it, but then it turns out that they're not going to be able to take him. Like, they're just, there's just no spot for them and everything. It's that they're not in wartime, so it's just doesn't. They just don't need generals right now at the time, because this is like I think it's supposed to be 10 years after the war's ended. So then, so Bob gets an idea, and he's like, let me call my friend who has this TV show, and let's kind of do something special for the general. Like, he did so much for us when we were in the war, and we just want to, like, not only, like, celebrate him, but also maybe bring some business to the inn and everything like that. So I'm going to talk to this guy that we were in the war with and say, like, hey, like, let's get everybody up there and everything like that. So while he's having that phone conversation, Emma, the housekeeper / concierge of the inn, she overhears it, but she only hears the part where the TV guy is saying, hey, we should do this, like, we should televise this show, like, from the inn. And so the way Ellen interprets it is that they're just going to kind of showcase the general on TV and everything like that. And that she's like, oh no, that's going to embarrass him. They're going to see that he's just, like, has this failed inn and everything like that. Even though that's not, like, that wasn't Bob's intention at all. He just wanted to, like, do something special, and he actually talks the TV guy out of having it televised and everything. He's like, no, that's not what it's about. But she's only hearing bits and pieces of the conversation because she's, like, eavesdropping, and then she does some hotel thing, and then eavesdropping again. So she's only hearing the parts of it. So she completely missed the part where Bob is a nice person and decent, and just heard the part where the TV guy's like, let's exploit the general and show off that he's not doing well. So while that whole thing's going on, we see that Phil and some of the dancers are doing some, like, interpretive dance thing, which seems a little ahead of its time, but this must be when it was, like, starting out. And then, but, like, the whole act is just about how, like, oh, like, what happened to good theater? Now it's all about weird dancing. It used to be about fun dancing. And they're all, like, wearing these, like, purple leotards. And yeah, so it's just kind of funny. After that whole thing with the eavesdropping, Emma goes and talks to Betty, and it's like, hey, like, this is what I heard is he's gonna do. And so she only hears the bad side of it, that isn't even the whole plan. And then so now she's, like, mad at Bob, even though he's, like, not doing anything. But she doesn't want to hear it from him or anything like that. So then, like, Betty's, like, saying how, like, she's, like, mad at him and everything like that. And so now Phil and Judy are worried that, like, oh, our plan isn't going to work. We need something big. Maybe the reason that she doesn't want to get married right now is that she thinks she needs to look after me. And maybe if I'm spoken for, then she doesn't have to worry about me anymore, and then she can, like, move on with her life. So they basically, like, fake an engagement to like, announce it at a party and everything, and say, like, oh, we're engaged now. And they announce it at that party, like, oh, we're engaged. And then that the ditzy blonde lady from earlier in the movie's there, and she's like, oh, I wish it would happen to me. And then Phil's like, yeah, me too. Like, I can't really explain it. It's like, you just have to see the clip itself, but it just, his read on that is just so funny to me. Like, it's just flawless comedic timing on that. So yeah, Betty leaves. She's like, nope, I'm out of here. Packs her bags. General's driving her to the train station. He's trying to like convince her to stay, but she's not hearing it. Then Bob's there too. He's like running up to the train, like, "No, where are you going?" And she's like, "Nope, I gotta go. I'm not talking to you. Bye." So she goes down to New York. Starts working at some nightclub. I think it's called the Carousel Club. And she's performing a solo act. She gets a note, or sends a note to Judy. And then she's like, oh no, like she left and now she knows why and everything. And so they don't know what to do and they just want to try to fix it. So Judy and Phil talk to Bob and say like, hey, this is what we did. Like the engagement was kind of fake, but like this is why she's mad at you. So maybe like you need to go down there and like talk to her like yourself and explain everything and all that. So Bob leaves. He goes down to New York, gets on the train, and he's going to go on TV. But first, before he does that, he's got to go talk to her. And so he goes to the Carousel Club and sees her perform, and basically sees her perform her diss track about him. And while he's like sitting right there, and then she like sees that he's in the audience, but like is like, oh, tries to tell the band leader like, no, we got to do a different song. And he's like, no, like this is the song that everyone came to see, so it's too late to change it. So she has to do the diss track right to his face. So they talk for a little bit. They're talking at the table, but she's still like, no, I'm gonna stay and everything like that. And so he's just like, okay, like, I did what I can. And then it's just like watch the show tonight, like, trust me. So, and then back in Vermont, we see that they're trying to distract the general from watching the TV because that's where they're going to make the announcement about the show, but they want it to be a surprise for him. So Phil's like going over the top. He's like faking a ankle injury, like he fell down the stairs and stuff like that, just to keep the general distracted and away from the TV, because he always watches that show every single night because that's like one of his guys is the host. So of course he's going to watch it because he's a supportive, nice person. So then we see cut to the show, and he's making the announcement, and he wants all the 151st Division to come to the inn and have this big celebration for him and everything like that. We're going to put on a show. You guys get to see the show, but you also get to be a part of it and everything like that. So Betty's like, she's watching the TV and she sees like that, she sees the truth, and it's like, okay, like good, like he is actually a good person. So she gets on a train, she heads back to Vermont, she makes it there, and they're setting up and everything, they're getting ready for the show, and the general just knows that it's like, oh, like the show that they've been practicing for, it's going to premiere tonight, and that's what it is, because they've just been doing rehearsals and everything like that up until this point. So he's like, oh, like, we got the show tonight, so I'm gonna so he dresses up all nice, but like a lot of people back then, like, your nice clothes was your dress uniform from the military. So he's all dressed up in his uniform and everything. The granddaughter's like, wow, like amazed by it, because he probably doesn't put this on too often, but he's just like, nope, this is a special occasion. I'm going to put on my military dress uniform and watch the show. And he walks into that ballroom and sees all of his soldiers and everything, and just immediately is emotional and starts crying and tearing up. And they're singing the song, they're doing the we're follow the old man wherever he wants to go. That they're doing that song for him, and he's just like in awe. He's just like can't believe it, and just is so happy. He's crying and he's getting emotional as he's making a speech, and I'm crying every time I watch it. Like, it's just such an emotional, like, well done scene, and just really, really love it. And then so he does his speech and how like thankful he is for them, and just like that these are the finest people he's ever seen, like laid eyes on and everything like that. So then it gets into the show. We get to see like they do a song like, gee, I wish I was back in the army. And it's like they're pointing out like how easy like your life. I mean, it wasn't easy in World War II, but like they're pointing out like the pros of like, oh, you get 3 free meals a day and this, and you get a place to sleep, you get this, but then, you know, it's also kind of an ironic thing because but then you like go get shot at and stuff like that, and you have to go away from your family and everything like that. But it's just like, you know, it's just kind of that fun like bittersweet emphasis song. And then as they're backstage between numbers, they notice that it's finally snowing. It's the first time it snowed since they've been in Vermont, and they open all the windows and everything. They open the barn doors, and the general goes outside to see it. And what else are you gonna do when it's snowing and you're in Vermont and you're in the movie White Christmas? You sing the song White Christmas, and that's how they close it out. They're all dressed in like different variants of Santa, and putting like fake presents under the tree and everything, and that it's all 4 of them. It's all 4 of the stars. They're singing White Christmas. It's snowing, and there we go. Credits right to the end. And it's just like, as you could tell, like this is a shorter episode. This isn't a very plot heavy movie, but I don't think a lot of musicals were, you know, because it is just like you're taking up a lot of your runtime with music, and because that's what you're there for. It's a musical. You're there for the music. So you don't get like a lot of plot, but you don't need it either, because it's just like you're there for the music. It's a very like comforting movie. It's just very like cozy and warm, and it's just like you put it on for the background, you put it on to watch it, you put it on to go to sleep, anything like that. It's just a good movie, and I love it, and I enjoy it, and just it's an essential for me every Christmas. It's not my favorite Christmas movie. We'll get to that maybe next year, but I love it. It's so good. And Bing Crosby, he's like one of the better singers of that era, and probably one of my favorite Christmas albums. It's the Bing Crosby and then the Nat King Cole. Those are the 2 go-tos for Christmas for me. So that's it. Like, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you guys stick around for next week. Don't forget to go to the website and follow, like, subscribe, all that stuff. We got the social medias. We got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that. So just check it out. Like, search us, leave a review, bring in those 5-star reviews and everything. It helps a lot. Like, it really does. And write something down if you got any questions. The Instagram is the best place to reach me. Movie suggestions, all that stuff. All right. So once again, this has been Movies, They're Pretty Good, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye.